Let's talk about cops. And I know you're already saying to yourself, why are we talking about cops? They're already everywhere. I go outside and they're there patrolling the neighborhood. I turn on the news, they're there being praised or villainized depending on the network. And when I read the newspaper, cops are there in articles about defunding them and what their role in society should be. When I open up my social media, they're there being argued about by friends and family members with posts on whether or not Blue Lives Matter and the merits of qualified immunity. And even when I try to escape all of that into the world of entertainment, as you can see here, cops are still there showing me the dangers that lurk beneath the surface in reality shows like World's Wildest Police Chases and Cops. They make me laugh on shows like Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Cops are there solving crimes ripped straight from the headline on shows like Law and Order. Hell, they even guard sporting events as if chaos could break out at any moment. This there-ness that we see physically with police officers standing on our street corners in their dark blues and driving down our streets in their black and white squad cars, and this there-ness that we see culturally with the many representations seen across mass media's various platforms is why we need to talk about cops. The space that they inhabit in American society as both a state apparatus that society has deemed so necessary that they are given the authority to kill other humans, and as an ideological apparatus that entertains, informs, and reinforces societal norms, grants them superhuman-like powers that no human should have.
Now, I know you have at least two questions after all of that, and they are one, what in the hell are these apparatuses? And two, what does it matter that the police occupy these physical and cultural spaces? To answer question one of what the hell are these apparatuses, we're going to have to look at Louis Althusser's 1968 essay, Ideology and Ideological State Apparatuses. Here, Althusser argues for a more material understanding of ideology, as for him, ideology is not just what people think about how the world should work and their role in it, but ideology is also embedded in the material world we create. Qualified immunity is an excellent example, as it is a law that was enacted by the government to protect the government because the government believed it deserved to be protected. According to Althusser, the ruling class likes to use two types of state apparatuses to dominate the working class, with the first being the repressive state apparatuses, which includes but is not limited to the courts, the police, and the armed forces. These apparatuses are used to keep the working class physically subdued, and the second set of apparatuses is the ideological state apparatuses. This set of apparatuses consists of educational institutions such as primary schools, high schools, and colleges, the mass media. It also includes churches, social clubs, and families. According to Althusser, you and I are being watched at all times, and everything we do just helps maintain the status quo. Now, I know your FBI guy is saying, how is any of this maintaining the status quo? Let me explain. Capitalism. That's right, capitalism. Owning shit because I can, capitalism. When put in the context of wanting to own shit, everything we've been striving towards as a species in terms of our advancements in technology and production, having individual rights, and being seen as equal to one another doesn't seem so progressive. So you're asking yourself, why does it matter? I mean, who doesn't love to own things? It matters when owning things is the end goal of society. It's only a matter of time before society becomes a thing to be owned. Now, if you're having a hard time believing that you, I, and the world are all for sale, then I invite you to consider the following. Netflix, Disney, Comcast, AT&T, Charter Communications, and Sony own 90% of the media. And if you weren't counting, that was six companies. Yeah, six companies own 90% of the media. There are currently 4.5 million acres of land for sale in the United States, and the federal minimum wage is currently $7.25 an hour. So even how much you and I can make an hour at minimum has been quantified. To answer question 2 of why does it matter that police occupy these physical and cultural spaces, we'll have to dig a little into history here. Since modern policing as we know it has evolved to what it is today in response to the Industrial Revolution and urbanization, and since its inception, there has been a need for physical police presence in society, since, according to police super freak Sir Robert Peel, who founded the London Metropolitan Police in 1829, the basic mission for which the police exist is to prevent crime and disorder. And as we all know, you really can't prevent the world from turning into a dumpster fire unless you're out there in it. Fun fact for you guys, the Bobbies of London, the police officers who wear the little weird hats, yeah, those dudes are Sir Robert Peel's namesake. So where were we? That's right, cops in public. The problem isn't the fact that cops exist in public spaces. The problem is that police have forgotten that they should be policing as a part of the community and those spaces, not policing the community and those spaces. And what I mean by this is that as policing has relied more and more on technology like car patrols to cover larger areas and the use of government databases to police effectively and efficiently, and they focus less on being in the community, actively interacting with it on a personal level with things such as foot patrols and bike patrols, they have removed themselves from being seen as a part of the community, preferring to be seen as an object guarding the community. And this has led to an increasing us versus them attitude between society and law enforcement as public support for their methods has worn thin. As for the significance of their cultural presence on TV and in films and grabbing headlines and just polarizing the public in general, the tension between the real world and the way people perceive it has been a problem since Plato's parable of the cave. And while there is still a debate about how much the shadows of mass media shape our reality, there is little debate about the fact that our sense of reality is shaped by the world in which we live. And as technology has flourished in the 21st century, mass media and technology has firmly planted itself as part of how we live and our window into the world. For example, in 2019, 4.5 billion people logged onto the internet. There were 3.8 billion active social media users and 5.8 billion unique mobile phone numbers. Cable news saw its ratings rise 72% in 2020, and on average, humans spent 403 minutes per day with media. That's over 6 hours a day. And again, you're asking yourself, why does it matter? It matters because when we are bombarded continuously with wave after wave of conflicting images of police as heroes, as villains, as jokes, as judges, as jury and executioner by the media and all of its forms, the lines between fact and fiction are bound to blur. And as we're seeing in a growing pool of research, while there isn't enough causation to point at mass media and say our sense of reality is influenced 1% for every hour of screen time, there is a correlation between media use and people's perception of policing. For example, studies are finding that social media users tend to be more sympathetic towards police officers, whereas those who get their news from independent internet sources tend to view the police a little more harshly. And another effect that has been talked about over and over again in the news is the CSI effect. And this is, for those of you not to know, is when jurors place science and technology on an undeserved crime-solving pedestal because of their excessive use and effectiveness in shows like Law & Order and CSI. So that uptick in calling for DNA evidence, ballistic evidence, fingerprinting as the nail in the coffin that convicts people, that's a direct result of shows like CSI and other crime-solving shows showing their technology as the thing that nails the guy every time. Now, I know that was a lot to take in, and you're tired about hearing about cops. And I definitely know that I'm come across very Dale Gribble-esque when I talk about police being a physical and cultural component of capitalism's ideological conspiracy to subdue humanity so that we can be easily commodified and consumed. Wow, that was a lot. But in a time when we're seeing a vast ideological divide between certain elements of the public and the government, which has resulted in more and more violent interactions between the police and the people they're supposed to protect and serve. We must talk about them and figure out where we go from here. Whether that is a complete abolishment of police forces as we know it and focus on using social programs to help improve our society, or we decide to keep the police but reinvent their role and training to focus on actively helping their community to be better instead of policing it, I don't know. But what I do know is that we need to talk about it sooner rather than later.